Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? You doing all right? Me? Well, I'm doing okay. I'm, I'm a little bit tired. Capitalism's kind of got me down today, but I'm gonna be all right. Oh, you want me to read you the news? All right. That's what I'm here to do anyway. So let's do it. Let's do some news. I'm actually gonna start out today with some recent news from Austin, actually. So I normally would start with Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union news, but I am going to start with some news in Austin because part of our mission is not necessarily just to kind of create a local mutual aid singularity, but also to foster the spirit of mutual aid and solidarity on a broader level and to build up networks wherever there's the opportunity to do so. And so, whether that means we are like joining forces or just providing support. So, I want to call attention to the actions of Black Revolutionary Anarchist Organization 400 plus 1 here in Austin, Texas. They're peacefully occupying Rosewood Park after the murder of Jordan Walton, a 21-year-old black man who was experiencing a mental health crisis that was killed by the police. They've named this place in Rosewood Park Jordan's Place in honor of him. I actually was doing my news roundup, laying in bed, and I saw that this was going on, packed up a care package for them with some of the stuff that I had. I didn't want to like overwhelm them with stuff. I've got quite a bit of like survival gear here. I try to be a bit of a prepper, but yeah, I try not to overwhelm them with too much stuff. I went to see what they needed as well, and they said it's easier to actually send them Venmo. And I think they're great to support because visiting them, they're very good folks, and I think that with the way that some of these neighborhoods have been gentrified and the way that they're over policed, the way that the police have been killing unarmed black people continually with impunity, there needs to be revolutionary activism like this. There needs to be this kind of peaceful direct action. They've been peacefully occupying this park for 2 weeks now. Visiting it, they've got some nice gardens growing. Not really sprouting yet. It's a lot better than like the gardens that that kind of went viral with Chaz, where they were growing it on the cardboard. It looks very like ecologically sound and like well designed. The way that they have the tent set up is like, I don't want to be too modernist, but I'd be like, oh yeah, the tents are so well spaced, but they're just like these, like they have very good tents too, and like, we're well set up, and it looks like it's turning into like a positive, peaceful community. I think that it's worth supporting them, and you can go to 401.com. That's all spelled out to learn more about them. I would recommend looking on Twitter, or I'm gonna actually put their link tree in the bottom. You can send them money on PayPal. I did this morning. Highly recommend supporting them, showing solidarity for them, because this struggle against police violence, against the oppression of the state, this struggle for the safety and belonging of people with mental illness in this country is a struggle that we're all facing and that we all need to take a part in. And for those of you in the audience who are white, there is a role that white people can play in the struggle for racial justice, leveraging aspects of our privilege in positive ways. So I highly recommend supporting them. District 11, and sorry, I'm going to move back to Colorado Springs now in my news broadcast, and then I'll slowly drift to regions afar. District 11 is selling 10 acres of land to Colorado Springs Airport to help drive a new expansion there. They originally intended to build a school on the land when it was donated to the district, but the Colorado Springs runway prevented that, and so they built McAuliffe instead, which serves that Peterson neighborhood over there. A local report indicates that about 30% of local roads in Colorado Springs are in poor condition, and 25% are in mediocre condition. And this costs the average driver about $644 annually. Recently, a ballot measure was passed in Colorado Springs, 2C, which is supposed to help with this. I know that the poor condition of roads in Colorado Springs will not be surprising to folks. We've actually had at General Assembly meetings, we have voted to research filling potholes ourselves. $644 a year, man. That's like according to Republicans in the Senate, that's enough for you to survive on for at least 6 months, if not more. So, yeah. A quarter of Colorado households are behind on their utility bills during the pandemic and the economic recession that has come with it. This comes on as the price of natural gas is scheduled to increase over the next year due to the recent deep freeze. This is the kind of thing that's going to get worse and worse with climate change, and it's going to continue to get worse as the state makes slower and slower progress on transitioning to an ecologically sustainable system. And I know that, they'll say, oh, we set a benchmark of 2040, or like, oh, we have a community solar garden now, or we're transitioning to natural gas here, but or clean, whatever, decommissioning Drake. We just need to get to full renewables as fast as possible. And beyond that, start to deal with the coming water crisis in the West and the coming food crisis as topsoil is depleted around the world. So, yeah, that's the utility bill. The utility bill thing, though, that's rough. A new bill plans to end the statute of limitations for sexual assault in Colorado, which I think is great news. If you rape someone, you should not be able to escape accountability. Although, granted, it would be best if that accountability emerged from outside of the state system. And the thing with that, those of you in the mutual aid union who voted on internal conversations about, just comments people have made and our decisions to stay with or not stay with other organizations, know that even doing that accountability process on a community level is hard. It takes a lot of work. But the thing is that we offload so much of it to the police, and the police end up being social workers. And they end up consuming a lot of the trauma that we in the rest of civil society don't witness. And so things like domestic violence and sexual assault become things that are kind of removed from our everyday consciousness. And they go on, and it's up to us to find ways to confront those problems head on in real life. So, yeah. Moving back to Texas, the Houston's Tenants Union, which you can find on Twitter at Houston Tenants, Tenants. I know I've talked about the Colorado Springs Tenants Union, which is doing great work. They're going on strike at Villas del Paseo apartment buildings until water is restored to the complex. At least 50% of the tenants in the building are going on strike. They have been without water for 2.5 weeks. ABC News is reporting that, quote, 4 public water systems in Texas overall, so this is Texas overall, remained out of commission on Wednesday, affecting 456 customers. And 225 systems still have 135,299 customers boiling their tap water, according to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Also, 208 of the state's 254 counties are still reporting public water system issues. In Jackson, Mississippi, where the winter storm also affected people, a boil notice is still in effect, and hundreds of people in smaller towns in Texas are without water. A fourth of residents in Jackson have no water whatsoever. This is as both states double down on lifting their mask mandates, which is dangerous because people are unable to wash their hands without running water. And without clean water, it is a lot harder to, you like are rationing your hands, your hand washing, so you're probably not maintaining that as often as you would need to, and it's hard to maintain social distancing at the distribution sites. So it's very serious, and I believe that there's still a need for mutual aid. Our water containers from the union are still up in Itasca, and I'm going to get in touch with the fire department that I left them with to see if they still need them, or if there's a way that if they know of any other places that might need those water containers, if they need me to like refill the water containers somewhere, anything like that. So that, moving on to national news. The House of Representatives has canceled a Thursday session over a threat of violence because they can't do anything over Zoom. Apparently, that's beneath. I think Boebert, if they try to do it over Zoom, she'd like say it's communism because she can't define that word and just thinks it refers to any slight inconvenience she faces. And so I guess it's that law enforcement said there's a credible threat because conspiracy theorists believe that Trump is going to return to office on March 4th because that's when presidents used to be inaugurated before the 20th Amendment, which is, wins a gold medal in mental gymnastics, I think. If not platinum medal in mental gymnastics. So, yeah. I'm very skeptical, though, that any militias are stupid enough to try that. At least the big ones. I could see maybe a smaller one. And sure, there's like little domestic terror cells, I'm sure, spread out in like rural Maryland, rural Virginia. But it does seem dubious that with all the National Guard troops there, that anyone would be dumb enough to actually try to invade Washington, D.C. right now. It seems tactically unwise, as they say. The House passed H.R. 1, which establishes a new public financing system for elections that increases the leverage of small dollar donors through a 6-to-1 match for each contribution up to $200. This includes this bill, which I have supported for a while, like back when I was more like liberal, not liberal, back when I was more willing to work with Democrats, I guess, is probably the better way to put it. I was like very intent on the main reason I supported Pete Buttigieg was the structural reforms to the democracy, and passing H.R. 1 was going to be one of his top priorities. Clearly, I don't know how Georgia would have worked out if Pete were in office, and it's like, yeah, but I do, H.R. 1 is a piece of legislation that, as far as a reform goes, it's good because it improves access to voting and brings us closer to being a real democracy. It includes automatic voter registration, restitution of voting rights to felons, expands early and absentee voting, requires additional disclosure of funding for... Oh my god, I have burp. Sorry. Required disclosure of funding for dark money, and it limits gerrymandering, although I wasn't clear from the article I read how it limits gerrymandering. House Republicans, realizing that more people voting will hinder their ability to win elections, unanimously voted against it. And you know what I say? I say, fuck them. Every single one of them. Take your bipartisanship and shove it up your ass. And anyway, due to lack of bipartisanship, it's probably likely not to pass the Senate because the Republicans the Republicans might manage to pad it, maybe with some kind of reforms that help them achieve their goals of turning America into a hyper-capitalist theocratic monarchy, or whatever passes for their ideology nowadays. Maybe they'll offer to let Ted Cruz finally buy a Thunderdome where Americans can fight over healthcare in West Texas, or add in a provision ensuring Rand Paul that his dad is very proud of him. They also passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which lowers the criminal intent standard from willful to knowing or reckless to convict a law enforcement officer for misconduct in a federal prosecution, limits qualified immunity as a defense to liability in a civil action against a law enforcement officer or state correctional officer, and authorizes the Department of Justice to issue subpoenas in investigations of police departments for a pattern or practice of discrimination. The bill also creates a national registry, the National Police Misconduct Registry, to compile data on complaints and records of police misconduct. It establishes a framework to prohibit racial profiling at the federal, state, and local levels. The bill establishes new requirements for law enforcement officers and agencies, including to report data on use of force incidents, to obtain training on implicit bias and racial profiling, and to wear body cameras. This is, I say this a lot, that like nothing they do is like totally enough for me, but I'm happy that there's like some minor reforms going through. And to Rand Paul, I'm sorry that I made fun of you and your dad, and I hope you think about what libertarianism used to mean, which had a lot to do with, not liking the cops. And, never mind, fuck you, Rand Paul, but still, please vote for this. Please. You're like one of the only Republicans to get them to their 60 vote thing, and god damn it. Just get rid of the filibuster, people. Just get rid of the filibuster. Just cut it. Fuck unity. Fuck bipartisanship. Yeah. And this happened like right after I posted my video yesterday. My video yesterday took forever to load. I'm sorry. Got out after the candidate forums. And there's still city council candidate forums today, by the way. It's with Fox 21 News. I didn't grab the details for them, but they're on fox21news.com, so just go there. Joe Biden compromised on cutting stimulus checks for people who make $80,000 in 2019, because that's how it has to work, unless they file their taxes for 2020, which is a pretty bad measuring stick for their well-being, and a great way to tell people in California to go fuck themselves, because in California, like, the income threshold for being impoverished is like 130,000. So I just feel like some of these things, if you're gonna try to means test it based on the standard of living. There's all these ways to like, I was reading last week in Costa Rica, Andrea Ballestero talks about the Costa Rican asadas and like water organizations who try to like establish water as a human right through market mechanisms. This is very neoliberal shit, honestly. Like, this isn't Marxist theory that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking like, here's a way that you can possibly means test this to make it slightly less awful. And even then, it's going to be awful and terrible. That's my mood right now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But what they do is they fix it to the consumer price index. Is what I was gonna say. So the consumer price index helps to inform this larger formula that calculates the price of water, and it dictates like how much profit can be made. This is even easier because you just have to get the cost of living and be like, are people able to survive here on this amount of money for a month? But then what that does is it makes them feel like they're getting in this slippery slope to UBI, which would be a good policy that would help people and make them not have to take shitty minimum wage jobs, and it would like make people's lives better. And if we do that, then we're one step closer to becoming Soviet Russia, and we can't do that, Morty. We can't. Sorry. Okay. Fuck the government. Fuck their stupid legislation. Fuck, like, their little bullshit, like, petty reforms. Like, go out, start a revolution. Crabby. You can just tell when I haven't got enough sleep. Arizona Governor Steve Ducey has ordered schools... Oh, this is more news. I'm just going to keep getting angrier and angrier as I get through this. Has ordered schools to return to in-person classes by March 15th with virtual options, giving them little time to adjust and take necessary precautions. He says, quote, "The science is clear," by which he means, quote, "I watched CPAC and I am afraid of a primary challenge," end quote. It was revealed that Texas Governor Greg Abbott likewise consulted only for one of his 4 medical advisors before issuing his order to lift the mask mandate and reopen the economy, which does suggest it was largely a political move. So, not good. Not good vibes there. Protesting in Washington, D.C., and this goes into national news, but it's more like going to start with foreign relations and then move into stuff that's less foreign relations-y. So protesting in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, the Black Alliance for Peace demands that the Biden administration, quote, "withdraw financial support for the illegal constitutional referendum and the Moise dictatorship in Haiti, respect the will of the vast majority of the people demanding democracy and Haitian self-determination, reaffirm support for the right to peacefully protest, immediately cease all U.S. financial and military support to Haiti's security forces, condemn the recent violence against the protesters and journalists, demand the immediate dismantlement of all paramilitary forces in Haiti and the disarmament of gangs carrying out wanton violence against the popular movement." And a lot of those are paramilitaries. Those paramilitaries and gangs, there's a really thin line between them and the army and them and the state. They're really a force of state control and of state clientelism and patronage. And honestly, they do the same thing in Venezuela. I was reading about today with the colectivas, although I don't want to wade into that because I feel like I need to find a good source on it. I feel, but from what I can see in Haiti, it does, like that, Moise is trying to cling to power as dissolved the legislature, and it's fucked up, and I support the demands of the Black Alliance for Peace. Mobile short-range ANTWQ-1 Avenger air defense missile systems were reportedly being transported from Iraq towards Syria by the U.S. to help safeguard against drone attacks. And you may be like, oh, the U.S. is being attacked by drones? And yes, they are. ISIS and others have been modifying commercially available drones into bombers capable of dropping small mortars and explosives. Little signs of military de-escalation or withdrawal from Iraq and Syria in that case. So it does seem like the U.S. under Biden is doubling down on trying to assert our presence in that region. It is also recent. I was hanging out with a friend from Colombia yesterday, who's in my cohort. Really nice guy, and I was like, hey, what's a good source of news on Colombia? I've been doing these news things. And he showed me, it was an RT video. So he was like, here's some of the places in English, here's some in Spanish. And I had no idea this was going on. And I feel like it's not been talked about in the mainstream media. Because a lot of the time it seems like there's this tendency, like if somebody isn't as obnoxious as Bolsonaro, to just ignore shitty right-wing politicians in Latin America, and including fascist politicians. So it's recently come to light that during the presidency of Alvaro Uribe Valdez in the 2000s, He was a general who had also like helped oversee the transition towards, from what my friend was explaining, and this is all off the cuff based on a conversation I had yesterday night. So if it's not correct, Raphael, please let me know. But he had kind of organized this move towards the war, intensification of the war on drugs after the fall of the Soviet Union, and an intensification of the war against the FARC guerrillas. Well, soldiers were being pressured to show results to the government in the form of a high body count. And sometimes, like, people would be lured to a job site and then killed by the army and then dressed as a FARC guerrilla in the uniform, sometimes like with, and you could tell that it was, they had been dressed up because they'd be wearing like mismatched clothing or like two left boots or like just not like have stuff on backwards or on incorrectly. And so about 18 people were being killed a week through the 2000s. The Colombian military killed at least 6,402 civilians, which is triple the amount that died under Pinochet's dictatorship. The people that kind of brought this to attention were the mothers of those people who had been killed. A lot of them were poor, a lot of them were indigenous or people of color in Colombia, which does have a long history of systemic racism like everywhere else in the Americas, because our entire the settler colonial economy here ran on slavery. But Uribe was awarded for that at the end of his term, at the end of Bush's term, with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And he continues to have inordinate influence over the government of Ivan Duque, although Duque has, in the past, like in 2019, before a more recent report came out, condemned those that he said, quote, dishonor the uniform. Although now that there's been more reporting coming out, it's shown that, like, not only were there triple the number of what are called their positivos falsos, I'm still learning Spanish, sorry, but also that, like, that the impetus for the extrajudicial killings came from, like, internal communiques, and some of those internal communiques have leaked, and they're disturbing as fuck, and they came from top down, and there's no doubt in the minds of many Colombians that Uribe not only has Duque as a puppet, but was supporting this this increased level of violence. However, the Duque administration has actually come under praise from Biden recently for deciding to grant amnesty to Venezuelan refugees who've entered the country so long as they register with the state, and kind of subject themselves to whatever kind of state control or surveillance that they have in mind. So that is happening. That's kind of a follow-up to our previous story about the buildup of troops on the Venezuelan border. Yeah. I do want to talk more about Venezuela too, because the Biden administration has doubled down today, yesterday, on the emergency declarations about Venezuela that had been initiated under Obama, intensified under the Trump administration, and now, like, is having their ambassador, whose name is Jimmy Story. I had to stop the video and look at Discord. Thank you, Noise Nerd, for providing me with that news tip. But yeah, Jimmy Story is the diplomat right now to Venezuela. And yeah, he has hosted events with Juan Guaido, other right-wing Venezuelan leaders with an interest in overthrowing Maduro. Remember, every time that you call Juan Guaido the democratically elected president of Venezuela, you make the job market for clowns just a little bit more crowded, which is a terrible thing to do in this economy. Clowns are hard workers, unlike Juan Guaido. 38 people were killed in Myanmar Wednesday after an escalation from the weekend. Live rounds of ammunition were being fired into the crowd. 1,200 people have been detained. Down with the dictatorship, I wrote last night at 3 a.m. as I did this news summary. Enough is enough. Myanmar forces, according to one source, were caught on camera beating emergency service personnel who showed up to these protests with the butts of their guns and batons and kicking them in the head, according to activist group Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. My phone keeps dimming. The Daily Beast reports that, quote, and this headline just caught my attention, I'm sorry, Japan's laws worked so well, their gun laws worked so well, that now they need to ban crossbows. You know what I have to say to that? You know what I have to say to that? Got a message for the Japanese parliament. You can have my crossbow. When you pry it out of my cold, dead hands. You hear me? My crossbow, and you ain't gonna do nothing to take it from me. You hear? Goddamn government. First they come for the guns, then that's not enough and they come for the goddamn crossbows. Although that's kind of just an example of like the failure of gun control. It's not treating the actual drivers of violence. Gun control is dumb and should not be a thing that we do. Background checks are fine, I guess. Like I've kind of made myself like I made it clear that like if someone wants to do something that makes like actually, you know, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's a good idea to do background checks, but like if someone wants to do like little tiny tweaks to make things a little bit better, it's okay. But like the thing is, like until you fix the underlying problems will stay there and the problem will go on. So like, yeah, in Japan, apparently the Yakuza doesn't use guns because it's too illegal. So now they're banning crossbows like this one, which is a like $120 mini crossbow that I use for fun sometimes when I want to shoot targets. And the idea that like this is going to be banned somewhere is stupid. I can probably barely kill a rabbit with this. Well, it's supposedly a 60-pound draw, but does not have 60-pound draw. I can tell you that. Liberal nonsense. Or whatever Japan is. I think Japan might be more like I don't know. I don't understand Japanese politics. But they're banning crossbows, and I feel personally threatened because the crossbow it's a surrogate for my penis, you know? And if they take my penis, what next? What are they gonna do? Are they gonna make me dress up in a maid outfit? Get down on my hands and knees? Beg them to spank me? Make me behave myself like a good little slut? Are they gonna write slut on my forehead, tie me up, peg me from behind? Is that what they're gonna do? Sorry, channeling Tucker Carlson there for a second. I'm not gonna be able to defend myself from these dominatrixes that are coming to take my crossbow. Oh my god, okay. I need to... This next item of news, I think is, as I was reading it, I'm like, this seems like it could be laying the groundwork for what will turn into a large international conflict that we will suddenly find ourselves embroiled in. And I'll explain. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, whose country is near the Nile headwaters, is aiming to hold a summit for the leaders of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Nile. And high modernists love their dams. Let me tell you, those high modernist state builders, they love those hydroelectric projects because it just makes their dick get real hard when they get to see that big old wall going up, all that water getting stopped and all that electricity. You're like, yeah, built a dam, taming nature. So yeah, they started filling it up in July. and there's a reservoir on the border. So this is all in the Nile River, I should clarify. For those of you who do not know African geography, there's one source of the Nile River I think it's the Blue Nile in Ethiopia, and then there's another source of the Nile River in like the Rift Valley area, like towards I believe it is in Burundi. And it took a long time to trace that source. I'm not sure if it's in Burundi. It's somewhere in the Great Lakes region. And so Uganda is one of those Great Lakes countries. It's kind of a leader in the East African Federation, which includes South Sudan, includes Kenya, includes Tanzania. I'm giving you a little bit of a lesson on East African geopolitics just for a second. And like DRC wants to join the EAF, so they're trying to work with Uganda in order to kind of mediate this. The DRC had suffered in the 90s and 2000s the most destructive wars in human history. They need like a Marshall Plan because of all the shit that's been done to them. Frankly, I think the United States should pay them fucking reparations after supporting Mobutu for 30 fucking years. But that's just me. And I'm on one today. God. Yeah. So they're planning to fill it again this coming July. That they're planning on doing it regardless. Uganda is trying to set up these meetings. DRC has been meeting with Egypt and Sudan. And so this is it actually brings to bear a lot of these racial boundaries that are perceived in Africa, that have been constructed by British colonialism and Italian colonialism, French colonialism, Belgian colonialism, between the Sahel and the Sahara, and it has created this sense, and it goes back to kind of religious conflicts too, but there's like this racist sentiment towards Black Africans in North Africa, and then there's this sense of like they aren't really Africans among sub-Saharan Africans towards North Africans. So complicated issues there. Members of the Nepalese government, who I'm really interested in learning more about, met with a banned violent communist splinter group to work out the terms of a peace deal. The Himalayan Times reports, according to the 3-point deal, this is confusing. I'm gonna move up one of my notes that's down here before I read you this quote. So allow me to start again about this. The splinter group they're meeting with is called the Communist Party of Nepal, right? That and the ruling party in Nepal is called the Nepal Communist Party. So the Nepal Communist Party is separate from the Communist Party of Nepal. The Nepal Communist Party is called the Nepal Communist Party double. The Communist Party of Nepal is a Maoist communist party, and they've been doing like violent stuff for a while, but they met with the government, and according to a 3-point deal, the CPN will resolve all their political issues through dialogue, conduct all their political activities in a peaceful manner, and the government will rescind all restrictions on CPN, release all arrested cadres, and release pending cases on the party. So that's good news. It's the de-escalation of a long-standing civil conflict, and in Nepal, the Communist Party holds a majority in a multi-party democracy. They're committed to multi-party democracy. So happen to hold the majority because they are most successful party. They're popular. Communism is broadly popular when people understand what it is and they haven't been brainwashed by propaganda. And so I wish them luck. I do want to know more about communism in Nepal because I'd like to just understand better how it's proceeding and to what extent it's really communism versus just communism as marketing strategy, or as, I don't know. I just don't understand it fully enough to really comment. It's like with Venezuela, like the inner workings of Venezuela, I'm really hesitant to comment on because all the sources I can find, I'm like, is this CIA propaganda? What is this? Like, do I talk about the colectivos and Maduro and try to criticize that, or am I going to be like wading into territory about stuff I don't understand and like unwittingly doing the CIA's job for them? What is life? What is time? What is existence? Am I real? Is that Ganesha sculpture that you may have noticed on my door a watching me? Is it real? Does it hear me? Do I need to offer it? Do I need to offer it something? Like, what do I do? Those are the questions I have. They're the questions that haunt me every day. And I hope now you're haunted by the same questions. Have a good day. Soviet National Anthem.